1 trillion US dollars. That's the estimated total amount China has lent to countries under the Belt and Road Initiative, BRI. It's a colossal flow of capital promising bridges, railways, and prosperity for nations hungry for development. Many have welcomed it as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, but to quite a few others, it bears a far more worrying label: debt trap diplomacy. They allege that China ensnares weaker countries with large loans, and then forces political economic concessions when those countries default. The story sounds familiar, but is it the whole truth? Sri Lanka's Hambantota port is the classic example. Built with billions of dollars in Chinese loans, the project was expected to become a bustling maritime hub, but revenues fell short, and Sri Lanka soon realized it could not service the debt. In 2017, the government leased the port and 15,000 surrounding acres to a Chinese company for 99 years. The Hambantota story became the 101 case study whenever debt traps were discussed. Yet the term itself predates Sri Lanka's crisis. In September 2013, President Xi Jinping announced the Silk Road Economic Belt, followed a month later by the 21st Century Maritime Silk Road. Together they formed BRI, an ambitious plan to connect Asia, Africa, and Europe, improve regional integration, boost trade, and spur growth. In 2017, Indian scholar Brahma Chileni wrote on Project Syndicate, popularizing the term debt trap diplomacy and arguing that Beijing uses infrastructure credit as a geopolitical tool. The phrase was short, clear, and quickly adopted by Western media and politicians, turning BRI in many eyes into a kind of neo-colonialism. According to the allegations, the trap unfolds in 4 steps. Step 1. Pick the debtor, target countries or strategic locations with weak governance, poor transparency, and internal discord. Step 2. Make an attractive offer, loans that seem easier than IMF or World Bank financing, with fewer reform conditions but tied to contractors, materials, and labor from the lending country. Step 3. Project slippage, cost overruns, low efficiency, and insufficient cash flow to service the debt. Step 4. Convert debt into leverage. When the borrower cannot pay, the lender gains control over strategic assets such as long leases or concessions, or secures political concessions. Beyond Hambantota, Entebbe International Airport in Uganda was rumored to include risky clauses allowing asset seizure upon default, sparking controversy even though an actual takeover never occurred. From there, many Western politicians, such as former U.S. Vice President Mike Pence, cited such cases as proof China was using credit to expand influence. The argument resonates with publics wary of an increasingly assertive China, but it isn't the only perspective. Step outside the lenses of Washington or NATO and the picture gets more complex. For a farmer in a remote district or a small business owner in Pakistan, the top priorities are electricity, roads, and ports, not great power rivalry. Some African leaders emphasize that China treats partners as equals and is willing to fund projects that Western lenders, the IMF or the World Bank, hesitate to touch. While loans from Western institutions often come with stringent reform conditions, including cut public spending, privatize, liberalize, BRI tends to impose fewer demands about political systems. As a result, joining BRI is often an intentional choice, not a decision made in a trance. Beijing, for its part, rejects the debt trap charge, calling it a discursive trap designed to smear and contain China. Officials stress that projects are proposed by borrowing countries with the stated aim of mutual benefit, and they cite figures on thousands of projects, hundreds of thousands of jobs, and tens of millions lifted from poverty among partner nations. If BRI is a trap, why have over 150 countries and 30 international organizations volunteered to participate? Between two opposing narratives, academic data helps clarify. Professor Deborah Brodegum, Director, China-Africa Research Initiative, Johns Hopkins, and colleagues, after years analyzing thousands of deals, found no systematic evidence that China deliberately pushes countries into debt to seize their assets. Returning to Hambantota, the port idea did not originate in China, but with Sri Lanka's then presidential family. They turned to Beijing after the US and India declined to help. At the time of the crisis, Chinese loans made up only a small share of Sri Lanka's total external debt. Most was owed to international markets and Western Japanese creditors. The 99-year lease was a commercial transaction proposed by Sri Lanka's new government to handle a loss-making asset and earn foreign exchange, not a seizure. In practice, when borrowers are genuinely distressed, China has often restructured, extended, or even forgiven parts of loans, for example with Angola, Ethiopia, Zambia. This shows that Beijing has been more flexible responsible in its negotiations rather than acting as a ruthless creditor. Responsibility on the borrower side also matters. Many failed projects stem from corruption, weak governance, and poor planning. Politicians sometimes pursue flashy mega projects to burnish their names instead of building practical infrastructure. Reality is far more complex than a one-note debt trap tale. This is not necessarily a pre-planned conspiracy, but a high-risk game where development ambitions, geopolitical calculations, managerial missteps, and genuine growth opportunities are intertwined. The key question isn't simply, is there a debt trap, but how to manage the risk so infrastructure projects actually deliver sustainable prosperity. Ultimately, the answer lies with the borrowing countries themselves. Their ability to select sound projects, ensure transparency, enforce fiscal discipline, and improve governance will determine success or failure, regardless of where the capital comes from.